That part of the reason that traditional public pensions are looked at with skepticism is that only about 1 in 6 private sector workers has a DB pension plan. And so it used to be the case that pensions were aspirational. People who didn't have them wanted them. And unfortunately, the trend has been, especially in the private sector, away from traditional pensions to the point where when people look at those people who have a pension, the reaction is unfortunately not, I think I should get that too, but all too often, they don't deserve it. So from my perspective, and the reason I am here, is that I think that preserving private sector pensions is important and relevant to you who live with public sector pensions. Anyone who reads the paper will tell you that pensions are in trouble. Many will tell you that they're dead, and they're wrong. But unfortunately, they have lots of company in that misconception. Today, only about half of private sector workers have any kind of employer-provided retirement plan. For most, that plan is a 401k. It's a defined contribution plan in which they get a decision to invest in some range of prearranged options. What a 401k means is that they have to decide how much to set aside. They have to be their own actuaries. It means they have to decide how much to invest. So that means they have to pick their own investment advisors. And it turns out that most of us aren't very good at either of them. And as a result, people end up putting too little into their 401ks. And we end up getting too little out of them. Participants in 401ks generally pay higher fees and get lower returns than the professionals at defined benefit plans. That's not surprising, but it is a fact. The last part of this, sometimes tragedy, is that what we do get, we get in a lump sum instead of in the form of reliable lifetime income. So that a depressing number of 75-year-olds are going to discover they've run out of money. Sadly, for many, it is now too late. But it's not too late for the 75 million Americans who still have public and private defined benefit plans. There are steps we can take to preserve them. In order to preserve plans, we need to focus on why employers are dropping them. And I'd list 3 points: cost, reliability, and responsibility. For employers, retirement plans have become a cost they need to limit. Employers also need reliability. They need to know what their obligations are and what they will be. With traditional defined benefit plans, their balance sheet obligations rise and fall with the markets. And as the accountants have gotten more and more assiduous about measuring each one, their balance sheets have risen and fallen. And just as important, businesses see their required pension contributions bounce up and down like a yo-yo, and they don't like it. They don't like the uncertainty. They don't like seeing their contributions going from $50 million in 1 year to $250 million the next. The last issue, responsibility. And let's be honest, many employers want less responsibility for their employees. Now, the fundamental premise of ERISA, of the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, is that if an employer offers a pension, then they become responsible for delivering that pension. They are a fiduciary. That's the law. That's the fact. But it is also a fact that as a result of that obligation, tens of thousands of employers have decided not to offer pensions at all. And more are doing so every year. So what does it take to preserve pensions? If pensions are going to survive, employers will need more flexibility. They will need flexibility to cut costs and to share costs with employees. They're going to need more flexibility in plan design, so at least part of the risk of investment losses is borne by employees. They're going to need more flexibility in contribution requirements. And they will need to be able to provide retirement with less responsibility and less hassle, because they always have the option of just going to a 401k and dumping the problem of retirement on employees. That's the bad news. The good news is that every single one of these is possible. Right now, in the private sector side, it is possible to cut future costs, future pension costs. Employers are doing it. Sharing costs of a current plan with employees will require legislation. But, let's be clear, that's legislation and an ability that the Congress has already afforded to define contribution plans. So it's not something new or radical. Flexibility in plan design is being worked at, even as we speak, by my colleagues in the Treasury. They are creating rules to clarify how businesses can offer hybrid plans, hybrid defined benefit plans, so that part of the investment risk is with the employer and part of it is with employees. Flexibility in contribution requirements has repeatedly been requested by plan sponsors and granted by the Congress. Congress has recognized that underfunding of obligations that arose over decades cannot be made up in a year or two, or even 5. Even the hardest of these, and it is the hardest of these, allowing employers to provide retirement plans while reducing their legal responsibilities doing so is possible. In fact, it's on the agenda, put there by Tom Harkin himself. Tom Harkin, some months ago, proposed USA retirement funds, a system of private retirement funds where the employer's responsibility would be limited to writing a check. The traditional fiduciary obligations would be the responsibility of the private funds, not the employer. Now, there's a long way, and I have every confidence that when Senator Harkin shows up, not even he will claim that this is about to become law, but the point is, it is possible to do this. It is possible to think about this. It is possible to develop solutions that can.